So, if you haven't heard of Krishnamurti, um, he was a young boy way back in the early 1900s, and like Cindy said, this person found him, and they thought he was going to be like the next Jesus or something. And this person got the parents to allow him to be raised and taught. So they thought he would be the one that's going to change the planet. And this is where channeling, people get really, really messed up, and they alter and change, and they distort people's lives instead of allowing them to become like my granddad told me. He says, I don't want to make you my puppet. I don't want to make you into something. I need you to figure it out to become the person you're meant to be in the future. And he opened me up to a lot of different things, but he allowed me to go down my path and make choices. And he always says, always ask questions, always read, always search, always try to find what it is you're looking for. It's important to understand, to protect your children. Allow them to become what they're meant to be. Don't try to force them to do something, because it starts pushing them down a path. Because once a child gets angry, they'll shut a door to something. They'll close it off. They'll go in a different direction. And if the child doesn't like something, they will literally shut it off and start doing everything and close everything down that maybe is really important to their future. So you find ways to play games and encourage them. My granddad always told me stories. He always told me things in a way that would make me more and more curious, and he would sort of lead me in a way, and he would help me to open up and look at stuff and feel safe. Anytime I had a problem, I went to him. Even when he couldn't answer and teach me, he says, I will find a way. And then he would search people out, and when he found the right person, he would send me to that person to see what I can learn from that. When I got home, he would always sit me down and say, well, now you tell me. So I would sit and I go through all the different things, and if he saw there was something in there that wasn't in the right way, he would have me go back over it and look at it and see how it fit together. And I always see it like having a deck of cards. You take a couple cards out of a tarot deck. You can't really do a reading. You need every one of those cards. So when they flip up in order, they tell a story. So you start removing cards, you don't have a full deck. You don't have the truth. You don't have what is there, because what is that potential that's missing? So knowledge is so important. This holographic machine needs all these things in the right way so it can solve this puzzle. It can figure out, why did you come into the world? Why did you choose to be a mother? Have you really figured that out? Why did you agree to bring a spirit in and say you're going to support them so they can become adults, they can become their highest good, they can be successful? How are you going to protect them from the whole world that wants to destroy them? And there's millions and millions of things out there, and trying to make them always feel safe so they always can come to you in a way that they know no matter what, they're always going to get the right things. And it's really, really important to understand this. But a lot of people don't recognize it, and they start forcing the teachings. And this is where it's a wrong number. It's a misunderstanding. And we attract a lot of people who do that. And that's where you have to understand, somebody shows up in your life, there's a reason for it. There's a lot of con artists. There's about 90% of the spirit world right now that they don't know what they're teaching and doing. They don't really care, because it's just, oh, I'm going to be, the next Deepak Chopra. I'm going to be the next Oprah. I'm going to be the next Doreen Virtue. I'm going to be the next medical medium. I'm going to be whatever it is, and I'm going to walk around. Everybody's going to go, ooh. And it's crap. So I'm going to start at this part where it says, there is no more beautiful or satisfactory description and qualifications that are given in this book. One may say with confidence that everyone who will thoroughly carry out this teachings will certainly pass immediately through the portal of initiation. It was a very exceptional case for the master to spend so much of his time in the direct teachings of one individual, but through Mr. Krishnamurti it has reached tens of thousands of others, help them to an immeasurable extent. The story of how this little book comes to be written is comparatively simple. Every night I had to take this boy in his astral body to the house of the master, that instructions might be given him. The master devoted perhaps 15 minutes each night to talking to him, but at the end of each talk, he always gathered up the main points of what he had said into a single sentence or a few sentences, thus making an easy little summary which was repeated to the boy so that he learnt it by heart. He remembered that summary in the morning and wrote it down. The book consists of these sentences. So the epitome of the master's teachings made by himself and in his words, the boy wrote them down somewhat laboriously, because his English was not then very good. He knew all these things by heart and did not trouble particularly about the notes that he had made. A little later he went up to Benares with our president. While there, he wrote to me. I being down at Adyar, Adyar, and asked me to collect and send him all the notes that he had made of what the master had said. I arranged this note as well as I could and typed them all out. Then it seemed to me that as these were mainly the master's words, I had better make sure that there is no mistake in recording them. Therefore, I took the typewriter copy which I had made to the master Kathumi and asked him to be so kind as to read it over. He read it, altered the word or two here and there, added some connecting and explanatory notes, and a few other sentences which I remembered having heard him speak to Mr. Krishnamurti. Then he said, yes, that seems correct, that will do. And he added, let us show it to the Lord Maitreya. And so we went together, and taking the manuscript, it was shown to the world teacher, himself, who read it and approved. It was he who said, you should make a nice little book of this to introduce Alcyone, Alcyone, to the world. We had not meant to introduce him to the world. We had not considered it desirable that a mass of thoughts should be concentrated on a boy of 13 who still had his education before him. But in the occult world, we do what we are told, so this book was put into the printer's hands as soon as possible. All the inconveniences which we expected from the premature publicity came about, but still the Lord Maitreya was right, and we were wrong, for the good that has been done by the book far outweighs the trouble it brought to us. Numbers of people, literally thousands, have written to say how their whole lives have been changed by it, how everything has become different to them because they have read it. It has been translated into 27 languages. There have been some 40 editions of it or more, and over 100,000 copies have been printed. Even now an edition of 1 million copies is being prepared in America. A wonderful work has been done by it. Above all, it bears a special imprimatur of the coming world teacher, imprimatur, imprimatur of the world teacher coming. And it is the thing that makes it most valuable, the fact that it shows us to a certain extent that his teaching is to be. Other books also there are which the pupil will find of the utmost use to him in the endeavors to enter upon the path. The Voice of the Silence and The Light on the Path. So those are two books were given to us for this purpose. Our President's Wonderful Book in the Outer Court is another one, and The Path of the Discipleship will also be found of inestimable value. Since the first edition of this book was published, the President and I have jointly issued a volume entitled Talks on the Path of Occultism. That's another book, which is commentary on the three classics above mentioned. The disciple's attitude, having these books before him, the pupil is left in no doubt as to what he should do. He should obviously make an effort along two particular lines. Development of his own character, the undertaking of definite work for others. Clearly, what is set before him in the teaching implies altogether different attitudes towards life in general. That has been expressed by one of the masters in the phrase, "He who wishes to work with us and for us must leave his own world and come to ours." That's why for me, all my life, I've lived in a different world, even though I'm around everybody. Good morning, everybody that's joining. And this is where people always want to fit in, say, "Oh, I'm so lonely," and want to pretend to cry, and when they're supposed to be busy searching and looking and reading and doing things, instead of sitting there in a room trying to feel like they're rejected. I never fit in, so I was always trying to find a way to find answers. The man of the world thinks of the events of life chiefly as they affect himself and his personal interests. The master thinks of them only as they affect the evolution of the world. Whatsoever on the whole tends to progress and helps humanity along the path, what is good and to be supported, whatever in any way hinders these things, that is undesirable and should be opposed or set aside. That is good which helps evolution, that is evil which retards it. Here we have Citron, Critteron, do that again. Critterion, very different from that of the outer world. A touchstone by means of which we can quickly decide what we must support and what we must resist. We can apply it to the qualities in our own character as well as our outer event. We shall be of use to the master just in so far as we can work along with them. In however humble a fashion, we can best work along with him by making ourselves little to him, so that we shall regard the world as he regards it. There is a poem which says, "The three doors." The three doors there are to the temple, to know, to work, to pray. And they who wait at the outer gates may enter by either way. Does that make sense? Real simple. Three doors there are to the temple, to know, to work, to pray. And they who wait at the outer gates may enter by either way. There are always the three ways a man may bring himself to the master's feet: by deep study, because in that way he comes to know and to feel, and certainly he may be reached by deep devotion, long continued, by the constant uplifting of the soul towards him. There is also the method of throwing oneself into some definite activity for him, but it must be something definitely done for him with that thought in mind. If there be credit or glory in this work, I do not want it. I do it in my Master's name. To him be the glory and the praise. The poem quoted above also says, there be who nor pray nor study, but yet can work right well. That is true. There are some who cannot make anything much of meditation, and when they try to study, they find it very hard. They ought to continue to try both these things because we must develop all sides of our nature, but most of all, they should throw themselves into the work, do something for their fellow men. That is the surest of all appeals, to do the thing in his name, to do the good, or acting, or sorry, to do the good, act thinking of him. So you're always thinking about the higher beings, truth masters, and you're always trying to do what they need you to do. You're not running around saying you're the healer, you're the master, you're the this, you're the that. You don't do that. That's where I say I'm a hollow bone. I'll channel whatever it is to you. I don't know if it's your angels or some higher beings, but whatever it is, I do the work they ask of me. If a man thinks of a friend at a distance, his thought goes to the friend and influences him, so that the friend thinks of the sender of the thought, unless his mind is much engaged at the moment with something else. But however much occupied the master may be, a thought directed to him makes a certain impression, although perhaps at the moment he may not take any notice, yet the touch is there. He will know of that and will send out his love and his energy in response to it. And this is where they're always doing lots of things. People want instant, right away, now, give me the answers, do this, do that, always. And they don't just want to be patient. The master's work. The question is sometimes asked as to what particular labor should be undertaken. The master is that all good work is the master's work. Everyone can find some good that he is able to do. In addition, some of the pupils actively must consist in preparing himself for greater responsibilities in the future. The duty of common life often combines something of both of these things, for they provide a splendid training and education for those who do them well, and also offer many occasions for helping other people to progress in character and ideals, which is most emphatically the master's business. All the varied activities of daily life come with our endeavors to serve the master, when we learn to do all in his name and for him. Then it says the common course of life, the daily rounds we plod, the tasks that seem so worrisome, may all be done for God. All may of him partake. Nothing can he so mean, which with his tincture for his sake will not grow bright and clean. A servant with this clause make drudgery divine, who weeps a room, who sweeps a room, as for his laws, make that small action fine. And that was written by Reverend George Herbert in 1593. And that's where in Christianity, even though you don't like something, you do it anyways. And you do it to the best of your ability. It's like, say you got hired and you're working at, say, McDonald's, and somebody is the chef cooking there and he's in the back and nobody knows. And he's flipping burgers and that. And there are people that do real stupid things, like they'll drop a burger on the floor instead of throwing it in the garbage. They'll put it in a sandwich and they'll put everything together and they'll give it to a person. Or they'll microwave your food and then they'll serve it to you and they don't tell you it's been microwaved. Like, there's lots and lots of things out there, and people choose to do good or bad. And it's like, when I have to work, even if it's a job that I don't like, I do it the best that I can. And that's where with the universe, even though, like, I gotta go and work to pay my bills, I gotta travel and do things. And that's where I make money to pay my bills. And then I take breaks where I read books and share knowledge. And I try to do, maybe a retreat, or I try to do this and that. I'm always trying to do something to earn a living because I have to pay my bills. Me and Cindy, we don't live on air, we don't eat blankets, we don't eat tobacco. So we have to be able to earn a living. And this is where even sometimes I have to go places I don't like, I still go there. I still do the work I have to do. When I worked on the Arctic Ocean, one of the things is I worked in the engine room, and there was a machine that all the sewage and everything had to go through. And once a month it had to get cleaned. It was my job because I worked at night. And they would shut this machine down and they would open up the lid. And I had to stay out of the engine room for about 4 or 5 hours because of all the gas and all of the things. Because if you go down there, you could end up dying. So they would vent the engine room. After about 4 hours, I would go down there and I would take it apart and I would clean this thing and I would take samples that we would have to send off to a science lab because it would discharge into the Arctic Ocean. And we didn't want to be putting bad things into the ocean. And this machine would break everything down into black water and then we would pump it into the ocean. But it would, man, the smell, it would go right through the ship. It would just be awful. And people used to get really mad at me. And I'm like, if I don't do this, you can't shower, you can't eat, you won't have breakfast, nothing will happen on the ship. And I have to do the job, not you. I'm the one that's up all night, and I gotta have this done, put together, and running before everybody wakes up. And people would just get so angry at me, and I'm like, I can't do anything about it. But I would do it to the best of my job so the whole ship could run in the daytime. In the night, I had to do all kinds of things to keep that ship running. The master's work is not something particular and apart from our fellows. To raise a good family who will serve him in turn, to make money to use in his service, to win power in order to help him with it. All these may be part of it. Yet in doing these things, the disciple must be ever on guard against self-deception. This is where people will deceive and lie and all kinds of things. Must see that he is not cloaking with the holiness of the Master's name what is underneath a selfish desire to wield power or handle money. The disciple of the Master has to look around and see what there is to do which is within his power. He must not look with disfavor upon the humblest task, thinking, I am too good for this. In the Master's business, no part is more important than any other, though some portions are more difficult than others and therefore require special training or unusual faculties or abilities. At the same time, certain organized efforts are being made in which the Master takes special interest. Foremost among these is Theosophical Society, which was founded at their bidding and for the purpose. So unquestionably, anything that one can do for the Theosophical Lodge is the very best thing to do. It may easily happen in many cases that one has no opportunity to do that. He must then find some other way of service. The masters are also deeply interested in co-masonry in the liberal Catholic Church. I say something later of the great works which these are doing on occult lines. There is also the Order of the Star of the East, which is preparing for the coming of the world teacher. There are a variety of movements for the benefit of young people, among which the Order of the Round Table plays a leading part. To this must be added activity in the fields of education on new lines and the work in connection with such body as the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. The Boy Scout movement is worthy of all the support that we can give it for the training which it supplies in the way of honor, helpfulness, and general efficiency is exactly what is needed to develop in the average boy the characteristics which will prepare him for the Master's service later. It is of far more value to him, both physical and spiritual, than any education given in an ordinary school. It is not without significance to those of us who understand that our president holds the position of the honorary chief commissioner of scouts in India and has done much to promote the spread of the organization. In quite unorganized way also, a great deal can be done. For example, the influence of beauty in human life is immeasurable, uplifting, for beauty is God's manifestation in nature. So, to give one instance, the roadside garden of all who are striving along these lines should be notable for their neatness and beauty. Many people are careless in these small matters. They are untidy, they leave rubbish in their wake, but all that indicates a character very far removed from the spirit of the master. If we work along the same lines as the master works, we shall come more and more into sympathy with him, and our thoughts will become more and more like his. This will bring us nearer and nearer to him, both in thought and activity, and in so doing, presently we shall attract his attention, for he is all the time watching the world in order to find those who will be of use in his work. Noticing us, he will presently draw us nearer to him for still closer and more detailed observation. That is usually done by bringing us into the contact with one who is already his pupil. That is thus quite unnecessary for anyone to make direct efforts to attract his attention. And like I say, there's always somebody going to show up in your life that's going to teach you things, because the universe knows what you're looking for. And like I say, there are good teachers and bad teachers. Making the link. Madame Blavatsky told us that wherever a person joined the outer Theosophical Society, the masters looked at him. And furthermore, she said that in many cases the great ones guided people to join the society because of their previous lives, and this is where past lives. You've already gained lots of knowledge. You've already tapped into the universe. You already did many, many things. So they look at that and they see what you did in those lifetimes, and then they take you on this path because they see where you'll be successful. And that's where you become a hollow bone and you let them work through you. So it would seem that they usually know a great deal about us before we know anything about them. The adepts never forget anything. He appears to be always in the full possession of all that has happened to him. And so if he does cast even a small casual glance at a person, he will never therefore overlook that person. When a person joins the inner school, a definite link is formed, not yet directly with an adept, but first of all with the outer head of the school, and through her with her master, who is an inner head. The link so made with the outer head is increased and strengthened at each step further into the school. In the introductory stages, there is but a slight connection. Something much more definite comes with the taking of the pledge of the school, and those who take the pledge of the higher degrees draw a little nearer still. This mainly shows itself in the thickening of the line of communication, for there is a line of thought connecting each member of the school with the outer head, because he constantly thinks of her in his meditation that keeps the link bright and strong. She on her part has become one with her master, therefore the connection with her is in the sense a connection with him. All those in the inner school are thus in touch with her master, the master more, though they are often working on other lines than his, and will become pupils of the other masters when they are taken on probation. Under each circumstance, however, they will receive the influence of their own future masters through these channels, because the adepts, although living far apart physically, are in such a very close contact that to be in touch with one of them is really to be linked with all, It seems to us a roundabout connection, but it is much less so than we think down here, because the amazingly close unity between the Great One on higher levels. Even at the early stage of this indirect link through the outer head, the Master can work to a certain extent through any of those people if he wishes to do so. It is a little out of his way to send his forces through a channel not specifically prepared, so he does not usually do it. But he has some sort of consciousness of those who are in his school, which sometimes manifests itself in a way of sending to them a helpful thought when they are doing some work for him. I have known him to utilize a member of the school who was giving a lecture in order to put some fresh point before the people. Of course, he does that far more frequently with his pupils, but it has certainly been done with others as well. And this is where, when people channel, it's like, where do your thoughts come from? You ever really sit and think where your thoughts come from? Why do you think so many different crazy things throughout a day? Where you connect really with the higher angels and spirit things, and where you go into really low different things. Where do they all come from? Are they all yours? And do you really link with your higher I am? Do you go to your 8th, 9th, 10th chakra and higher? Do you really, really sit there focusing, letting your higher I am really, really help you? Or are you streaming in from other dimensions, from the fourth dimension, from all kinds of craziness? Is there somebody connected to you that's projecting their thoughts and trying to distort your life and your reality? This is where you pray at night to be protected. So when you dream your reality, you create your future. And a lot of people, they just go to sleep. And they have people come in their dreams because those people want to pull you there, and they want you to get stuck in creating their reality. And this is what we do when we're born. We're born into a family, we're born into a town, we're born into a group of people. And some of them hold us stuck from many, many lifetimes, because in many lifetimes we've had experiences with them. And they don't want to let us go, they keep us trapped there. And some of them have hated us for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes. And they want us to play it out in the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So you just keep karmically doing that. So where are all these thoughts coming from? Do you have the right teacher or what? So none is overlooked. Anybody that wants to connect to higher is never overlooked. When a student understands all this, he will no longer ask, what can I do and what will attract the master's attention? He will know that it is quite unnecessary that he should try to do so, and there is not the slightest fear that anyone will be overlooked. I remember very well an incident of the early days of my own connection with the Great Ones, which bears on this point. I knew on the physical plane a man of vast erudition, erudition, and of the most saintly character, who believed thoroughly in the existence of the masters, and devoted his life to one object of qualifying himself for their service. He seemed to me a man in every way so entirely suitable for discipleship, so obviously better than myself in many ways, that I could not understand how it was that he was not already recognized. And so, being young in the work and ignorant, one day when a good opportunity offered itself, very humbly and as it were apologetically, I mentioned his name to the master, with the suggestion that he might perhaps prove a good instrument. A smile of kindly amusement broke out on the master's face as he said, "Ah, you need not fear that your friend is being overlooked. No one can ever be overlooked. But in this case, there still remains a certain karma to be worked out, which makes it impossible at the moment to accept your suggestion. Soon your friend will pass away from the physical plane, and soon he will return to it again. then the expectations will be complete, or the expiation, expiation, expiation will be complete, and what you desire for him will have become possible. So some things you're doing in this lifetime is getting you close to something, but maybe you chose to reincarnate, and in the next round you will get it right. And then with gentle kindness, which is always so prominent and characteristic in him, he blended my consciousness with his in an even more intimate manner and raised it to a plane far higher than I could then reach. And from that elevation he showed me how the great ones look out upon the world. The whole earth lay before us with all its millions of souls, undeveloped, most of them, and therefore inconspicuous. But everywhere amidst all the mighty multitude there was one who was approaching, even at a great distance, and that point at which definite use could be made of him. He stood out among the rest just as a flame of a lighthouse stands out in the darkness of the night. And that's where the universe, all the masters see that in people. They know what you're going to become. And that's why people are chasing, trying to be all kinds of things. And it's like, if it's already in you, you're going to be that. If not, go ahead, try whatever you want. But the universe sees and knows everything. They know what your thoughts are. They know when you learn something, what you will do with it or not do with it. And this is where you ask for the right teachers. Sometimes you stop and you go back to the beginning to see if maybe you found the answer. Maybe you already had it. When people say they're making you into the shamans, when they're saying they're making you into this and that, be really, really careful. See, my granddad trained me. He didn't make me anything. He made me feel safe to open up and become everything I became. And I met lots of other medicine men and shamans. They didn't try to make me anything. They took me in and out of things and they allowed me to experience. When I felt safe, I opened up to what I needed to. When I went to Buddhism, they didn't make me a Buddhist. They didn't make me anything. I went in there and I sat. Kusho was the teacher, and he was from Tibet and he is a Lama. And I studied and I read and I discovered what I needed to. Kusho didn't make me into a Buddhist or a Tibetan monk or anything else. The universe allowed me to have an experience that is mine. The point of which definite use could be made of him. He stood out among the rest just as a flame of a lighthouse stands out in the darkness of a night. No, now you see, said the master, how utterly impossible it would be that anyone should be overlooked who is even within measurable distance of the possibilities of acceptance as a probationer. We can do nothing on our side but steadily work at the improvement of our character and endeavor in every possible way by the study of theosophical works, by self-development, by the unselflessness of the devotion to the interests of others, to fit ourselves for the honor which we desire, having within our minds the utter certainty that as soon as we are ready, the recognition will assuredly come. But until we can utilize economically, until, that is to say, the force spent upon us will bring forth through our actions at least as much result as it would if spent in another way. It would be a violation of duty on the part of the master to draw us into close relationship with him. We may be quite sure that there are in reality no expectations to this or no exceptions to this rule, even though we may sometimes think that we have seen some. A man may be put upon probation by an adept while he has still some obvious faults, but we may be sure that in such a case there are good qualities under the surface which far more than counterbalance the superficial defects. It is only the master who can judge how far our faults affect our usefulness to him. We cannot tell exactly to what extent any failings of our world react upon his work, But he, looking at the problem from above, can see quite clearly all the factors in the case, so that his decision is always just and in the best interest of all. Sentimental considerations have no place in occultism. That's why you can't feel sorry. It doesn't work. You can't be a bleeding empath. It does not work. Which has been defined as a hypothesis of common sense, working always for the greatest good of the greatest number. In it, we learn from many facets and forces. We remodel our lives in accordance with the additional knowledge. This, after all, differs in no way from our practice, or what ought to be our practice. On this physical plane, new discoveries along scientific lines are constantly being made. We use them and adapt our lives to them. Why should we not do the same when the discoveries are on higher planes? And should we not do this we're on higher planes connected with the inner life? To understand the laws of nature and to live in harmony with them is the way to comfort, health, and progress, both spiritual and physical. Another consideration which sometimes comes into play is working of the law of karma. Like the rest of us, the great masters of wisdom have a long line of lives behind them, and in those lives they, like others, have made certain karmic ties, and so sometimes it happens that a particular individual has a claim on them for some service rendered long ago. In the lines of the past lives which we have examined, we have sometimes come across instances of such karmic links. So even in the higher planes, they work with karma. It's important to understand it's there. Mistakes and things that go on are there for a reason. You chose it. And you can't understand what you did 300,000 lifetimes ago. You can't even understand what you did 50 lifetimes ago if you were a good or bad person. And so in this lifetime, there's lots going on, and it's like, oh, I need to look at this. And when there's something that's not good, you can't run away from it and pretend to be an angel. And you don't need to always go to people. Sometimes you can close your eyes, and while you're in that energy and thought, visit that chakra. Sit in it. Don't cry. Don't give it energy. Don't waste time. Don't beat it up. Just look at it. Watch the movie. Like watching Freddy Krueger or watching Halloween or one of those stupid, silly movies that are supposed to be really scary, or the Chainsaw Massacre, running around with a dumb chainsaw. I mean, these are ours, and you created them for a reason. And sometimes you're the one who has the answer. But sometimes you don't like the answer. Sometimes you don't like the things you need to do. And you have to love everything about yourself. You have to heal yourself. You have to honor and do what is right by you. Somebody else can't tell you how to do something. Sometimes the universe already gave you that, and you want somebody to give you permission. It's a choice. Do you really love yourself, or do you want to punish yourself? And all I want is for everybody to discover their own thing so that they can choose their path, whatever it is. So everybody has choices in this life and what they want to do. Like I say, ask for your teachers. Ask for what really is yours. And I say you've had many experiences, even as a child growing up, maybe sitting with your grandparents. They helped you understand all kinds of things, and you didn't realize. And then when they left, or they're not in your life anymore, you're running and you're chasing. Oh, there's singing bowls. Oh, there's light language. Oh, there's Buddhism. Oh, there's this. And you hear people and you want to be friends with them, so you run along. And you just join in all these things. And sometimes we need to go back to the beginning Why did we do this? Do I already have the answers? Have I already been carrying the answers? Can I just give myself 1 year to sit quiet, to go inside, to meditate, connect with my 8th, ninth, 10th chakra, with my higher I am? Can I just sit with that and just understand this is my God? It has all my answers. It's been with me billions and billions and billions of lifetimes. Why can't I acknowledge and love it and sit with it and love myself? Or can I master this? Can I really become something? Can I really help others? And that's, everybody has to question themselves and sit with themselves. This one, the responsibility of the teacher. It is obviously necessary that a master should be cautious in selecting candidates for discipleship. You see, in my life, I just wanted to teach people. I didn't use caution. I just wanted everybody to know everything I did. I wanted everybody to experience what I did. And I helped people access lots of knowledge. And a lot of them were not nice people. They're not good. Lots of them got lots of lifetimes to grow and learn. And when they're around me, they get really high, they get really stoned, and they just suck the energy and everything. And so there's lots of times in my life where I wasn't, where my granddad was very cautious, how he taught me what he would have me do, where he would have me go. I didn't. I just blew all doors open, and I wanted everybody to experience all kinds of things they were not ready to experience. It is obviously necessary the master should be cautious in selecting candidates for discipleship, not only because his own work might be prodigiously affected by an unworthy pupil, but because the teacher has a certain definite responsibility for the mistakes of the cella. Madame Blavatsky writes on this subject as follows: there is one important fact at which the student should be made acquainted, namely the enormous, almost limitless responsibility assumed by the teacher for the sake of the pupil. From the gurus of the East who teach gurus of the East who teach openly or secretly, down to the new Kabbalists in the Western lands who undertake to teach the rudiments of the sacred sciences to their disciples. Those Western hierophants being often themselves ignorant of the dangers they incur. One and all of these teachers are subject to the same inviolable law. From the moment they begin really to teach, from the instant they confer any power, whether psychic, mental, or physical, on their pupils, they take upon themselves all the sins of that pupil in connection with the occult science, whether the omission or commission, until the moment when initiation makes the pupil a master and the responsibility in his turn. Thus it's clear why the teachers are so reticent, reticent, and why chelas are required to serve a 7-year probation to prove their fitness and develop the qualities necessary to the security of both master and pupil. And Madame Blavatsky wrote that in the Practical Occultism. The spiritual guru, taking the student by the hand, leads him into and introduces him to a world entirely unknown to him. Even in common daily life, parents, nurses, tutors, and instructors are generally held responsible for the habits and future ethics of a child. So long as the pupil is too ignorant to be sure of his vision and power of discrimination, it is not natural that it is the guide who should be responsible for the sin of him who he has led into those dangerous regions. As we shall see in subsequent chapters, a man comes into close relationship with the master. He has much more power than he had before. One who becomes a pupil of a master can therefore do much more good, but he could also do much more harm if he happened to let his force go in the wrong direction. Very often the young disciple does not realize the power of his own thought. The man in the street may think something foolish or untrue without producing any serious effect, because he does not know how to think strongly. He may think ill of someone else without making any very great impression upon that person. But if a disciple who has the power of the master within him and has trained himself by long practice and meditation to use it should misunderstand another person and think evil of him, his strong thought current would act prejudicially upon that person and might even seriously affect the whole of his future career. And this is where lots of people are trying to go into spirituality for power. A lot of them are going into native spirituality, and they want this power where they can affect people, where they can do sorcery and black magic and make people do what they want. They want to do spells, love spells, and you become a sorcerer. You're not a spiritual person. And they want people to fear them. And they're in gangs. There's really lots of gangs all over the world. Like even now, ayahuasca, you go to Central America, there's big gangs that they'll destroy the spiritual teacher, and they want you to be afraid. And there's a lot of people that are seeking this. They're not seeking how to better the world. They want to control and manipulate everybody. And a lot of people get into meditations and they realize this. They get into yoga and they access this and they see how they affect people. And they want to control everybody. So they search lots of other cultures. And they try to find somebody like me and try to trick me into giving them answers. And they use the knowledge wrong. And I have to be careful what I teach people, because in here, what it says, it does come back. And sometimes I've given people knowledge, they've used it wrong, and I've had to pay really bad for it in my life. If the victim really had the undesirable qualities attributed to him, the pupil's potent thought would intensify it. If no such quality existed, the same thought form would suggest it and might easily awaken it if it were latent, might even plant its seed if it were as yet no sign of it. Sometimes the mind of the human being is in a condition of balance between good course and an evil one. And when that is the case, the impact of the vivid thought form from within may be sufficient to turn the scale and may cause the weaker brother to embark upon a line of action, the results of which, for good or evil, may extend through many incarnations. How careful then must the pupil be to see that the enhanced thought power with which his connection to his master has endowed him shall be used always to strengthen and never to weaken those towards whom it is directed. And this is where in natives we're very, very clear. There is good medicine. There is bad medicine. Good medicine is praying and wanting good for everybody. Bad medicine is, oh, I don't like you and I will make sure your life is miserable and bad. I will destroy you. I'll take anything. Oh, you're married. You got a beautiful wife. I want her. I'll destroy your life and take that. I'll make you miserable, whatever. That's bad, bad medicine, and that comes from here. Good medicine is, oh, I love you and I want to see you better. I'm happy you're to love your marriage. You have good home. You got everything good. I want God to bless you with more. That's good medicine. Everything depends upon the form in which the thought is cast. We are, of course, assuming that the intentions of the disciple is always of the noblest, but his execution may be defective. Suppose, for example, a weaker brother is addicted to the vice of intemperance. If the thought of the pupil should happen to turn in the direction of that man, his musing might obviously take several different lines. Let us hope there would be no danger of his despising the man for his weakness or shrinking from him with the aversion of disgust. But it is quite possible that he might think, what a frightful crime is that man's drunkenness! How terrible is its effect upon his wife and children! How can he be so inconsiderate, so selfish, so cruel? Every word of it true, quite a reasonable thought, fully justified by the circumstance, but in no way unkind, but not helpful to the victim. However correct and impeachable is the sentiment, the prominent idea is that the blame to the sinner and the effect of the thought form is to crush him still further into the mire. So if somebody is a drunk, you don't say, oh yeah, they're just drunks, oh, they're just that, because you're keeping them more and more stuck. Instead of thinking, you know what, God bless, I believe you can heal and change. You can do that for a drug addict. You can do that for a person on the street. Instead of condemning them, going, oh yeah, they're just this, oh, they're just that. Because you keep them stuck. It's like you're putting more and more prisons and cages and things around them they can't get out of. And that's what people do all over this world. It's really, really bad. Why not take the far stronger line of definite mental actions? I invoke the God within the man. I call upon the ego to assert itself, to conquer the weakness of the lower self, to say, I can and I will. That, if that be done, the dominant idea is not blame but encouragement. And that's where you got to encourage people. I try to do that. And the effect is not to depress the sufferer, but to help him to raise himself from the slime of his hopelessness to the firm ground of virility and freedom. I hope that really makes sense to you, because I know people that are that way. I know Christians are really bad to do that. And it's so simple. I invoke the God within that man. I call upon the ego to assert himself, to conquer the weakness of the lower self, to say, I can and I will. And that's where you're helping the person on some level. Question mark. If that be done, the dominant idea, if not, or is not, blame but encouragement, and the effect is not to depress the sufferer, but to help him to raise himself from the slime of hopelessness to a firm ground of virility and freedom. And that's what spirituality is about. It's about, oh, I have this knowledge. Can I use it in a way that's going to better other people's lives? Another quality most essential for the aspirant is open-mindedness, from freedom from bigotry of any sort. Madame Blavatsky once told us that her master had remarked that erroneous beliefs were sometimes a great obstacle. As an example, he said that there were 100,000 of the Indian sannyas who were leading the purest lives and were quite ready for discipleship, except for the fact that their ingrained wrong thought on certain subjects made it impossible for even the masters to penetrate their auras. Such thoughts, he said, drew around themselves undesirable elementals, most unpleasant influences, which reacted upon them and intensified their misconceptions, so that until they developed enough reason and intuition to shake themselves free from these, they were practically impervious to suggestion. So when a person has a really strong belief and they don't want to believe you, they don't want to hear, they don't want to listen, it could take years and years and years for you to finally help them to realize. And then they decide to change it or not. But as long as they believe that, they have all kinds of things around them. And those things will attack you. They will war with you. They will do all kinds of things. And that's what it's talking about here, erroneous beliefs. And erroneous beliefs, everybody has some somewhere. And this is something that is there. You have a wonderful day too, Mother Creator. Um, so I'm just going to underline this one here too. So I'm going to read it again. He said that there were hundreds of thousands of Indian sannyas who were leading the purest lives and were ready for discipleship, except the fact that their ingrained thoughts on certain subjects made it impossible for even the masters to penetrate their energies. Such thoughts, he said, drew around them undesirable elements, most unpleasant influences, which reacted upon them and intensified their misconceptions, that until they developed enough reason and intuition to shake themselves free from these, they were practically impervious to suggestion. So even these higher angelic beings couldn't help them until they realized. And sometimes a person's brought to you, they're very stubborn, and somehow you're meant to help them to see through that, and then one day they will change and heal it. It has been said that an honest man is the noblest work of God, and Connell Ingersoll once parried that proverb by revising it and saying that an honest God was the noblest work of man, by which he meant that each man arrives at his conception of God by personifying those qualities in himself which he thinks most worthy of admiration. So if a man has a noble conception of God, it shows that there is much nobility in his own nature, even though he may not always live up to that ideal. So that's really self-explanatory about a lot of different things on that. And this is where we get to choose. And when people are brought to you and they piss you off all the time, maybe they're helping you to look at your own beliefs. And maybe what you're believing is not true. Think most worthy raising them to the end power. If man has noble conceptions of God, there is nobility of his own nature, even though he may not always live up to the ideal. So, this is where I found, as I grew up, I learned a lot of things, I read a lot of things. And I come across elders and that, and they try to teach me, but I was really stubborn in my belief. And even as a child, there were things that I made my own laws and rules. So when these teachers came along, I wasn't willing to agree with them. I was God. I knew everything. There was nothing they could teach me. And they would tell me things, and man, I'd get angry. And they'd show up over and over and over. And one day I'm like, oh, there's something I'm doing. And I realized I had to change inside. I had to do something different. I had to work on something and correct that. And so I did it. And then my life would change. And I'm like, whoa, that was way out there. And this is where you learn over and over and over to go back in, because the more knowledge you gain, the more you got to undo all kinds of beliefs and things. And the more you're going to see where you're wrong in all kinds of ways. But a wrong conception of God is one of the most serious hindrances under which man can suffer. The idea of the Jehovah of the Old Testament, bloodthirsty, jealous, mean, cruel, has been responsible for an amount of harm in the world that cannot easily be estimated. Any thought of God which induces fear of him is absolutely disastrous and precludes all hope of real progress. It shuts a man up in the darkest of dungeons instead of leading him onwards and upwards into the glory of the sunlight. It draws around him a host of types of elements which reveal in fear, gloats over it, and intensifies it by every means within his power. When a man is in that perilous condition, it is all but impossible to help him. Wherefore, to teach a man, still more a child, such a blasphemous doctrine is one of the worst crimes that anyone can commit. The disciple must be utterly free from all cramping superstitions of this kind. Then it says the effects of meditation. Remember also that everyone who meditates upon the masters makes a definite connection with him. which shows itself to the clairvoyant vision as a kind of line of light. The master always subsequently feels the impinging of such a line and sends out in response a steady stream of magnetism which continues to play long after the meditation is over. The methodical practice of such meditations and concentration is thus the utmost help to the aspirant, and regularly is one of the most important factors in producing the result. It should be undertaken daily at the same hour, and we should steadily preserve with it even though no obvious effects may be produced. When no results appear, we must be specifically careful to avoid depression, because that makes it more difficult for the master's influence to act upon us. And it also shows that we are thinking of ourselves more than of him. In the beginning, this practice of meditation is desirable to watch closely its physical effects. Methods prescribed by those who understand the matter ought never to cause headache or any other pain, yet such results do sometimes occur in particular cases. It is true that meditation strains the thought and the attention a little further than its customary point in any individual, but that should be so carefully done, so free from any kind of excess, as not to cause any physical ill effects. So if somebody's making you do meditations and afterwards you're feeling sick, all kinds of things, don't go there anymore. Sometimes a person takes it up too strenuously, like you will do it to yourself. You'll force it, and you'll get headaches, all kinds of stuff. Don't do that. And for too long at a time, or when the body is not in a fit state of health, and the consequence is a certain amount of suffering. It is fatally easy to press one's physical brain just a little too far, and when that happens, it is often difficult to recover equilibrium. Sometimes a condition may be produced in a few days, which it will take years to set right. So anyone who begins to feel any unpleasant effects should at once stop the practice for a while and attend to his physical health, and if possible consult someone who knows more than he does about the subject. That's why I say you need the right teachers. Common hindrances. Getting close to finishing what Cindy wanted me to read. Common hindrances. People very often come or write to our president or to myself and say, "Why does not the master use me? I am so earnest and devoted to him. I do so want to be used. I want him to take me and teach me. Why does he not do so?" There may be many reasons why he does not. Sometimes a person asking that has some prominent fault, which is in itself quite a sufficient reason. Not infrequently, I regret to say, it is pride. Most people have real lots of pride from their cultures and ancestors, and they're so stuck in it they don't know how to get out of it. A person may have so good a conceit of himself that he is not amenable to teaching, although he thinks that he is. Very often in this civilization of ours, the fault is irritability. A lot of people get very irritated and they can't stand, they don't want to listen to anything. A good and worthy person may have this nerve all a jangle so that it would be impossible for him to be drawn into very close and constant touch with the master. Sometimes the impediment is curiosity, and lots of people are way too curious, and like I say, it gets them into all kinds of trouble. Some are surprised to hear that is a serious failing, but certainly it is curiosity about the affairs of other people. And that's where people want to astral travel in other people's lives, and that's not what it's all about. Other people's lives are theirs, not yours. Curiosity about the affairs of other people, and especially about the occult standing or development. It would be quite impossible that a master should draw near himself one who had that failing. Another common hindrance is the readiness to be offended. Many a good and earnest aspirant is so easily offended as to be of particularly no use in the work. Because he cannot get on with other people, he will have to wait until he has learned to adapt himself and to cooperate with any person whatever. Many people who make the inquiry have failings of this kind, and they do not like it if their fault is pointed out to them. They do not generally believe that they have it, and imagine that we are in error. But in rare cases, they are willing to profit by the suggestion. I remember very well a lady coming to me in an American city and asking the question, "What is the matter with me? Why am I not drawn near to the Master?" "Do you really want to know?" I asked. Yes, certainly she really wished to know. She adjured me to look at her occultly or clairvoyantly, or in any way I wish, at all her vehicles and her past lives, and to decide thereby. I took her at her word and said, "Well, if you really want to know, there is too much ego in your cosmos. You are thinking all about yourself and not about enough about the work." Of course, she was terribly offended. She flounced out of the room, and she said she did not think much of my clairvoyance. But that lady had the courage to come back 2 years later and say, "What you told me was quite true, and I was going to put it right and to work hard at it." That story has repeated itself many times, except that this is the only case in which the person came back and acknowledged the fault. Unquestionably, the disciple who is willing to see himself as others see him may learn much that will help him in progress. I recollect that one of the masters once remarked that the first duty of a chela is to hear without anger anything the guru may say. He should be eager to change himself, to get rid of his faults. Madame Blavatsky said chelaship has been defined by a master as a psychic resolvent which eats away all dross and leaves only the pure gold behind. Self-centeredness is only another form of pride, but is very prominent at present day. The personality which have been building up for many thousands of years has grown strong and often self-assertive, and it is one of the hardest tasks to reverse its attitude and compel it to acquire the habits of looking at things from the standpoint of others. One must certainly step out of the center of his own circle, as I explained in the inner life, if he wishes to come to the Master. It sometimes happens, however, that those who ask the questions have not any particular outstanding defect. When one looks them over, one can only say, "I do not see any definite reasons, any one fault which is holding you back. But you will have to grow a little all around." That is an unpalatable thing to have to tell a person, but it is a fact. They are not yet big enough and must grow before they will be worthy. One thing which often prevents people from coming in touch with the Master is the lack of faith and will. Unless a person tries earnestly with full belief that he can, and with the determination that he will succeed one day, and that that day shall come as soon as possible. You have to believe that. That's the only way you're ever going to do it. It is fairly certain that he will not prevail. While we know that in some of us there are failings, yet I do not think there are at least some cases among us in which it is just the lack of that intense determination which holds us back. And that's where everybody wants to be told what to do. When my granddad died, I made a decision that got me where I am today. And that was when I was 17 years old, 16, 17 years old. Here I am in my 60s. I was determined, and I still am determined, to keep going forwards into the future. It requires some strength and bigness to put oneself in the attitude towards the work which the master himself adopts, because, in addition to any defect of our own, we have a whole pressure of thought of the world against us. Madame Blavatsky gave us the fullest warnings in the beginning about both these difficulties. She writes, as soon as anyone pledges himself to the probationer, certain occult effects ensue. The first is the throwing outward of everything latent in the nature of the man, his faults, habits, qualities, or subdued desires, whether good or bad or indifferent. For instance, a man be vain or sensualist or ambitious. These vices are sure to break out, even if he has hitherto successfully concealed or repressed them. They will come to the front irrepressibly, and he will have to fight 100 times harder than before until he kills all such tendencies on himself. On the other hand, if he be good, generous, chaste, ambestimos, I don't know, Abstemous, or has any virtue latent and concealed in him, it will work its way out as irrepressible as the rest. This is an immutable law in the domain of the occult. So anything that you have, you're not trying to deal with, somewhere it's going to surface. Everybody will see and know it. You can't hide nothing. Does the reader recall the old proverb, let sleeping dogs lie? There is a world of occult meaning in that. No man or woman knows his or her moral strength until it is tried. Thousands go through life very respectable because they have never been put to the test. One who undertakes to try for celliship by that very act rouses every sleeping passion of his animal nature. The Chela is called to face not only all the latent evil propensities of his nature, but in addition the momentum of maleficent forces accumulated by the community and nation to which he belongs. So whatever is your ancestors, it comes up and you have to try to heal it and move on from it. If he is content to go along with his neighbor and be almost as they are, perhaps a little better or somewhat worse than the average, no one may give him a thought, but let it be known that he has been able to detect the hollow mockery of social life, of hypocrisy, selflessness, sensuality, cupidity, and other bad features, and has determined to lift himself up to a higher level. At once his hatred and every bad, bigoted, or malice nature sends to him a current of opposing willpower. Those who drift along with the current of evolution and will reach the stage in a very far distant future will find it much easier, for popular opinion at that period will be in harmony with these ideas. We have now, however, to resist what the Christians would call temptation, this steady pressure of opinion from without, for millions of people around us are thinking personal thoughts. To make a stand against these needs of real effort, true courage, and perseverance, we must doggedly keep to the task, and though we may fail again and again, we must not lose heart, but get up and go on. That's where there's so many people's thoughts that pull you in, and you're like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And then you catch it, and you go, oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to start over again. And it goes on and on. I've done this all my life. The astral and mental bodies of an aspirant ought to be continually exhibiting 4 or 5 big and glowing emotions, love, devotion, sympathy, intellectual aspirations among them. But instead of a few great feelings vibrating splendidly and clearly with fine color, one generally sees the astral body spotted over with red, brown, and gray and black vortices, often hundreds or more. They are somewhat like a mass of warts on a physical body, preventing the skin from being sensitive as it should be. The candidate must see to it that these are removed and that the usual tangle of petty emotions is entirely combed away. That's why we can't be emotional garbage dumps. Doesn't work. Okay, last part. Devotion must be complete. There can be no half measures on this path. Many people are in positions of those much maligned individual anasas and asaphira. It will be remembered how they, not at all unnaturally, nor in the blameworthy manner, wanted to keep something to fall back upon, as they were not quite sure that the new Christian movement was going to be a success. They were very enthusiastic and wanted to give all that they could, but they did feel that it was the path of wisdom to keep a little back in case the movement failed. For that they were not in the least to be blamed. But what they did do, which was most damaging and improper, was that, though keeping something back, they did not admit the fact, but pretended that they had given all. There are many today who follow their example. I hope the story is not true, because the apostle was certainly somewhat severe upon them, severe upon them. We do not give everything, but keep back a little bit of ourselves. I do not mean of our money, but of personal feelings deep down, which hold us back from the Master's feet. In occultism, that will not do. We must follow the Master without reserve, not saying within, I will follow the Master long as he does not want me to work with such and such a person. I will follow the Master so long as all that I do is recognized and mentioned in the papers. We must not make conditions. Do not mean that we should give up our ordinary physical plain duties, but simply that our whole self should be at the Master's disposal. We must be prepared to yield anything, to go anywhere, not as a test, but because the love of the work is the biggest thing in our lives. Sometimes people ask, if I do all these things, how long will it before the Master takes me on probation? There will be no delay, but there is much virtue in the world, if in this question. It is not so easy to do them perfectly, and were that required, it would no doubt be a long time before we could hope for discipleship. But one of the masters has said, he who does his best does enough for us. If one has not delighted in service for his own sake, but is only looking for the reward of occult recognition, he has not really the right spirit. If he has the right attitude, he will go on tirelessly and do good work, leaving the Master to announce his pleasures when and how he may choose. Our Hindu brethren have a very sound tradition in this matter. They would say 20 or 30 years of service is as nothing. There are many in India who have served for the whole of their lives and have never had any outward recognition, though inwardly they are being guided by a master. I met with an instance of this a few years ago. I had to make some inquiry with regard to some of the Indian brethren about these things, and the answer of the Master was, for 40 years have I had those men under observation. Let them be content with that. And they were more than content. Since then, I may mention, they have received further recognition, have become initiates. Our Indian brothers knows within himself that the Master is aware of his service, but the pupil does not mind whether he chooses to take any outward notice of it or not. He would, of course, be exceedingly happy if the Master did not notice him, but if that does not happen, he goes on just the same. I read that before, so hopefully that brings you a little deeper into stuff. Yeah, the vocabulary from the 1900s, like we don't use some of those words. When I read them, some of them don't make sense. It just scrambles my mind. And I have a hard time trying to pronounce it correctly. I mean, I've always had difficulty reading, and it took me a long time to read, and I worked really hard at it throughout my life. And there's sometimes it's just no matter what I do, I just can't get a word. Sometimes I'll get it, and then other times I'll short circuit and I won't be able to say it. Um, but you see, these things, what was explained there, like all of us all have ego. All of us have our own laws and beliefs. All of us have our own ways of looking at things. All of us have cultural things. All of us have ancestral stuff. All of us are in towns and cities surrounded with all kinds of crazy things. And sometimes, like this Virgo full moon is going to bring up really lots of energy. And if you're in a city or a big town, it's going to affect the way you think, you know. And a lot of people are going to go to ceremonies. There's going to be all kinds of people doing singing bowls and cacao and light language. There's going to be a lot of people doing tantra. There's going to be a lot of people doing yoga, and they're stimulating energy. And they all want to get high and stoned. They all want to have head buns and malas and diaper pants, and they all want to say namaste. And they build this energy, and then afterwards they go and get drunk and have orgies. And for 2 days they're going to be doing this. And you might get pulled in and go, wow, why am I in this? And you go, whoa, I made a mistake. I wasn't paying attention to my thoughts. I allowed everything to pull me, and now I got to go back and try to fix this. And like I say, it teaches you. We're all human beings. And you learn about yourself. And you learn to change the way you think towards anything. And that's something I've had to do over and over throughout my life. There were times where I was very judgmental. I was very angry because of residential school. And I had a lot of hatred towards cultures. I had a lot of hatred to what that preacher did, telling us how we were going to burn in hell. And I was very bigoted. I was very small minded. I was very, very mean in my thoughts. And I had to realize and go, whoa. And I had to go, I need to heal and change this. I need to do this, nobody else. The only one lives in here is me. Or I can go up in here and go, wow, those are bad beliefs. Wow, those are bad things. I need to fix and change that. I'm responsible to me. There's a big boat full of people and they're all celebrating. That person runs and jumps in that boat. Don't know where that boat is going. Don't know who those people are doing. Don't even know why they're there. But they're in there and are just like, oh yeah, this is going to make me God. Somebody of them hands them a paddle. And they're paddling for years in this boat. And one day they're like, where the hell am I? Who are these weirdos? Why did I do this? And now they want to jump out of the boat and they're lost and they're confused and there's 5 more boats. Which one should they jump in now? Or maybe they need to just go on the shore, light a fire and spend time alone. You can say we're only responsible for who we are. And this is where you need to find your spiritual family. Really, really ask your teachers, your guides, when you go to sleep, when you get up, when you meditate and things. And to really allow them to guide you to find this, so you find your happiness. Like I say, in my life, for over 30 years, I blew the doors wide open. And I wanted everybody to experience what I experienced. And I gave so much knowledge to people. And I allowed people to do anything and everything. And there's times I regret the things that I have done. And I don't want other people to make those mistakes. Do you really want to grow and change? Do you really, really want to help this earth? Do you really want to be in the 4th and 5th dimension? Because if you want that, then you're going to work your ass off to bring yourself, and you're going to teach people through things. You're going to share your mistakes. Because I've made a lot of mistakes. So, thank you all again. I send you all good And I believe all this stuff's going to get in your subconscious. Even when you go to sleep and that, it's going to do something to bring change. Because the universe is bringing you, because you're asking for the right knowledge, for the right kinds of teachers. And if you're into yoga, follow that path. I'm not here to tell you not to do anything. Wherever you feel you need to go, go there.